Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be doing my July native plant garden tour. I've got a ton of plants in bloom. I've actually got some plants that have already passed and are setting seed, and I've got a ton of pollinator action. The two powerhouses right now for pollinator magnets are Lanceleaf Coreopsis and swamp milkweed. So very excited to show you where everything is at. Let's get to the videos now. Thanks so much for watching. Here in our boulevard garden, we've got our Lanceleaf Coreopsis, and it is looking awesome. We've already had a ton of blooms. You can see the bright yellow flowers that just scream summer to me. These ones here have passed, and then they will start to develop seeds. So you can deadhead this, and that will help push the flowers out. But honestly, this bloomed all season for me. This was the longest blooming flower in my gardens by far. So really you can deadhead it if you want. You can also collect the seeds after the seed heads dry up, or you can just leave it alone and let it do its thing. Here is the Prairie Smoke that I have that bloomed. So we've got lots of these bloom heads that are still sticking out. I'll probably just cut these back and add them to the soil because I do want it to look kind of tidy in this part of the garden because it's right kind of front and center in my boulevard garden here. And here are my younger Prairie Smoke plants. We've got lots of new growth happening in there, a couple little dried leaves, no big deal. This guy's going to do fine. And I have this now in a few spots on my boulevard garden, which is awesome. In the middle here, we have our wild blue lupin. You can see that it's kind of getting dry at the edges of the leaves here, so I'm not quite sure what's happening. We've had a ton of rain, and it's been a pretty kind of off and on summer with rain and sun, which is pretty much what plants need. So I'm not sure what's going on here. If you know, do let me know. We've got some seeds developing here on the bloom heads that have passed, and then some dried seed heads. So that's when you know the seeds are ready for harvesting. If you let them pass too long, they actually unfurl. And I don't have any popping out quite yet, but they will actually unfurl. They'll open up and uncurl, and then the seeds will fall. So if you want to collect the seeds, this would be a good time to do so when they're kind of dark and crispy, but they haven't opened up and dropped the seeds. Here's my prickly pear cactus. Now I had some blooms. This one has passed already for sure. I got some pictures of that. It was yellow bloom, and I kind of think this one might have come and gone already. I was away for a few days and I think I might have missed it. And I really needed to see the inside of that flower to see the coloring so that I could clearly identify this plant, because I've been told that I might not have the eastern prickly pear cactus on my hands here, but perhaps a different kind or maybe a cultivar. So for now, we will call it prickly pear cactus, and if I can somehow identify this more accurately, I surely will, and I'll be updating you guys along the way. Here in our boulevard garden, we've got a couple of our volunteer milkweed. So very cool. These things just appeared. We've got our swamp milkweed right here with the lovely pink flowers, which is just a pollinator magnet. Even as we're speaking, there's some bees buzzing around, itsy bitsy tiny ones. We've got some ants in there. All sorts of creatures love this plant. And if you haven't taken a moment to take a little sniff of this plant, it is absolutely beautiful smelling. It smells a little bit like candy in my mind. What do you think it smells like? And then over here, we've got our common milkweed. So that's what this is. The flowers have passed. And so hopefully we'll get some seed pods growing here, and we'll have more to share. And then here is our Daisy Fleabane. So this has all gone to seed, and it's so cute. These tiny little pom-poms. Adorable. So hopefully we'll get more of this next year as well. Here's some for the neighbors. Here you go, neighbors. Down here to the left of my volunteer milkweeds, we've got our nodding onion. I have 3 little patches. 1, 2, 3. No flowers this year, so hopefully next year we'll get some. We've got a little bit more of our common milkweed just sprouting up, doing its thing in this boulevard garden. In the middle of this boulevard garden, we've got our dense blazing star. Now this I got as a tiny little plug, so just a new little plant, and it's taking quite a while to get established. So hopefully next year we'll get some blooms, and they stand up pretty nice and tall with those big kind of spire of beautiful purple flowers. So fingers crossed for next year. Here's one of our patches of golden alexanders. This is in a shadier spot, and it's doing well kind of here behind my hostas. This is a host plant to the black swallowtail butterfly, but I do see a little critter in here, which is probably hindering that. There's a spider in here that might be eating the eggs if there's any eggs to be found. So it goes. That's all part of the biodiversity game, but I do hope to find a black swallowtail caterpillar on here at some point. Here in our part shade garden, we've got some wood poppy. This is a new plant to my garden this year from Ontario Native Plants. We had a couple flowers, and now we've got some seed pods. This one is a little speckled with some black dots, so I'm not sure if that is a normal feature to this plant. So if you think that this one is sick or anything, do let me know. But over here, I do think we have some good signs. We've got one of the seed pods that has popped open. So this looks like it's dropped its seeds. Hopefully they're down here in and amongst the soil and making themselves a happy home so we can have more wood poppy in this area next year. Here in the middle of this part shade garden, we've got this Ohio spiderwort. This plant has flowered and now it's going to seed. So these little guys are all developing seed, which I'm going to let kind of fall here to the ground so that it can spread more in this part of the garden. Now I am thinking that I might have a cultivar of spiderwort over here just behind it. I thought that that one might have been the native variety, but now that I'm seeing this one, which is definitely Ohio spiderwort, that perhaps I might have some cultivars going on. Down here we have a new native basil. So this apparently is edible, but it doesn't have as strong of a flavor as our culinary basil. So I'm just growing this for the pollinators. It, when it flowers, has beautiful tiered, tiny little flowers, kind of like a spotted bee balm. So hopefully this will make itself happy in this part of the garden. And then over behind it is our foxglove beard tongue. That is new to my garden as well. So that again will stand up probably about 2 to 3 feet or so with a whole bunch of beautiful white flowers at the top of it. So this year it will probably stay tiny like this as it kind of gets its footing. But again, next year maybe we'll get some lovely blooms. Here is our little blue stem grass. I've got one little patch here and then another kind of behind my little log over here. And I really love this plant. It has a beautiful kind of frosty green foliage. And then later throughout the year, it turns almost like a rosy color. It is very beautiful and a nice addition to the native plant garden. Over here is my sneezeweed. This was just a tiny little thing this year. It's probably quadrupled in size, but still not even close to what it could get to. In the perfect conditions, this plant can get 5-6 feet tall. So not sure how big it will get in this kind of part shade and dry area. But we do see that I think we're going to get some blooms again this year. So it is just such a cute, pretty yellow flower. And I hope to be showing that to you perhaps in the next video. Here's my patch of black raspberries, and I got a whole bunch of berries this year. Very excited. They were delicious, and little fingers have eaten a ton of them. But here we've got one right here. They actually will get even blacker, and they are delicious and sweet, and I would highly recommend them. Let's see if this one will come off. Yes, so they are a little bit smaller than the berries that we have that are not the native variety. And they are sweet and delicious. And I've got a whole bunch of new stalks coming too. So looks like we're going to be getting some next year as well. Here is my lovely native shade garden. Everything in here is native with the exception of 2 tiny little astilbes that are hiding in there. So let's go in and show you where everything is at. Here's the white trillium. And look, we're getting some seeds. So that's kind of exciting. After the seeds develop, they are brought down into the ground by ants, and that is how this is propagated. And then it takes like 6-7 years for these to bloom. But hey, this is happy. This is clearly a beautiful plant, and then we had some lovely blooms this spring. Over here is our Jack in the pulpit, and I'm not sure how happy this is. It feels kind of weak in there, so I'm a little concerned. I'm not sure that these will make viable seeds, but we did have a beautiful bloom, and it is a lot taller than I had expected. This is about maybe 2 to 3 feet tall, so it might need to find another spot in the garden, but for now it's going to live right here. Over here we have some great blue lobelia, and so this looks like it might be starting to develop some blooms in there. And then this is our lady fern. So So that's doing all right. I thought this thing was going to be unhappy because it does need more moisture than I had expected, but it's looking great. In the back here, we've got 2 choke cherries. One is a transplant from a friend on the right here, and then another one is from the Bee Sweet Nature Company, and they look a little different. So I'm a little concerned that they're different varieties. So if you can distinguish these and let me know if they are the same or if they are different, I would like to hear. I think they're the same. They just had different growing conditions. So I hope, because they're now neighbors. And this plant will grow quite large. It can get 20 feet high or so. So it's just outside the drip line of the roof. So I might need to contain it by cutting. Over here is our large leaf aster. And we're going to get lots of blooms here. Look at this. All sorts of blooms are coming on their way. We've got one here and then another one here and another one there. So I'm not sure if those 2 are going to bloom. Well, maybe they will. Or maybe we have something else here. We will see. In the back here is my Zigzag Goldenrod. And I'm not sure how happy it is. Check out the leaves. They're looking a little kind of crinkly. So I'm not sure if this is telling me that perhaps it's not getting quite enough water, but I am seeing that it does look like it wants to flower. I see some little flowers forming over here and a couple more back there. So hopefully it's happy enough. It really has filled in, so that's a good sign. So we will wait and see. In the middle here is my bush honeysuckle. Again, I have a couple different leaves here, so it's making me confused if I have a couple things going on, but this is the bush honeysuckle here. And then I have another set of leaves here, which I thought was bush honeysuckle as well. And another little random stalk of it back here. So I'm not sure if it's just spreading its legs out or if I have a couple different things going on. To the right, standing up tall, is the Bottlebrush Grass. Now this is all kind of fallen over, so I put these little supports here to help it stand up nice and tall. But you can see that it's going to seed, and check out these very cool seed heads. Don't they look awesome? Very, very cool plant. It hasn't spread too wildly either with all these seeds. It's kind of just expanding by the base here, so it's behaving quite nicely in the garden as well. Over here we have our Christmas fern, and you can see at the bottom of it that we've got these spores here, and that's a good sign because that is how this plant reproduces. So very cool. I'm learning more things as we go, and hopefully we'll get even more of this expanding in our shady garden. Over to the right, we have what I think might be Dutchman's breeches. This was a new little plant last year that held on. No flowers this year to confirm the species, but I will hope for that maybe next year. All at the front here is my Woodland Strawberry. There were lots of berries, lots of lovely little flowers. They all developed into berries, but I didn't see any get red. So I don't know if they're getting eaten before they turn red or if something's up. See, that one's looking a little gnarly. These ones back here look kind of plump and juicy, but who knows if they'll get red or not, or if they'll get eaten up by a critter or two before I get my hands on one. I would like to try one, but if they do get eaten up, that's okay. That's what they're here for. Here we have our Canada anemone. All the flowers have passed, and now we have these little seed heads forming, and you can see that there's little seeds forming too. So there's a little seed just on its way. We'll let these dry out, and then they can drop, or maybe we'll collect them and give them to friends as well. At the back, standing up tall, is our Solomon seal. All the flowers have passed here as well, but these look really awesome all season long because they stand up nice and tall and green. This is where the seeds would be, but I don't see any forming. That's all right. This is also spreading under the ground, so it is filling in nicely in the back part of the garden. And this plant does really well despite any dryness or drought conditions. So an awesome plant for height and interest in the shade garden. Here, holding its own amongst the hostas and the Japanese anemone, is the Marginal Fern. And this is doing great. This was transplanted a while back from my cottage, and it's looking awesome. It's got lots of new fronds. I actually have been stealing a bit of it from my cottage every time we go because it's in a spot that gets mowed. So we have a little bit over here too. So hoping that it fills in nicely. And I have a little combination of hostas and then the ferns, and we'll be getting rid of these lilies here because some of those might even be invasive. We need to get rid of those stat. Here is my heartleaf foam flower, and it's doing pretty good this year. It is looking a little lighter in color and has a bit of rosiness on the leaves. You can see I've got some interesting webs going on, so I don't know what is making a home in here, but it is quite a pretty little project that it has, and it's clearly working. We've got some critters in there. I did see that we had a few seeds, so I'm going to collect them. And then I'm going to do a fall sowing to see if I can maybe get these to propagate via seed. This hasn't really spread out too much. I've had this one little plant for a few years now, so I'm really hoping that I can get some more by runners, also maybe by seed as well. Here is our wild columbine, and it's looking awesome. We've got tons of seeds forming. They form in these cute little pockets, and they're tiny little black seeds. They're ready for harvesting if you'd like to collect any to sow elsewhere or to give to friends when they're dry and crispy like this. And you could just tip them upside down, pour them in your hand, or put them right into the garden if you like. Over here is our itty bitty redbud tree. We've got 2 of these on the property, and they are growing really well. We've got lots of leaves forming. They're the pretty little heart-shaped leaves that form. We didn't get any flowers this year, so hopefully next year. And this plant is actually going to be quite large in this part of the garden. It should be about maybe 15, 20 feet high, so just a wee thing right now. Here is my second little redbud tree, and take a look. We've got evidence of leaf cutter bees. Is that not the coolest thing? The little bees will come and chew off a little circle of leaf and carry it off like a little burrito. And then that's what they will protect their baby bees in when they find a perfect spot to house their baby bees. So very cool. So happy that this plant is supporting other critters already, even when it's just a wee little thing. Over here beside my rain barrel is my largest New England Aster plant, and it is looking really awesome, nice and healthy. We've got about 4 feet or so of height at this tallest spot here. I didn't actually Chelsea chop this year. I felt like I was a little too late on that, so I just left it. So you can see that it's kind of branching out. We've got all sorts of branches, and we'll have a ton of those beautiful purple flowers a little bit later on in the season. Over here we have our bright and beautiful butterfly milkweed. This plant is just so vibrant. It probably is even hard for the camera to manage the color here. It's a pollinator magnet. We've even got some pollinators coming to visit right now in the back there. We've got all sorts of little critters that come, bees, tiny bees, butterflies. It's an awesome plant for the garden, and it also is a host plant to the monarch butterfly. Now this one is really well contained in the garden too. It doesn't get too big, only about 3 feet or so tall, and it doesn't spread too wildly, though it does make seeds, which then you can plant elsewhere and give to friends as well, which is always exciting. So definitely one of my favorites in the garden, especially when it comes to pollinator plants. Over here is our itsy bitsy butterfly milkweed. So this plant I fall sowed not last fall, but the fall before. So I had a tiny little seedling that I planted last year, and it held on. I haven't been that successful with seedlings from milkweed, but this guy hopefully is just kind of setting his roots so he can really establish himself in a few parts of my garden now. It's a little tricky to see, but right here in the middle is my serviceberry bush. This plant didn't make any flowers this year, so we didn't get any berries. Maybe next year we'll be lucky enough to get some, because I do absolutely love those fruits, and they are perfectly in season right now where I am in 5B, so take a look if you can find any, get your hands on them. They're absolutely delicious. Over here I have another one of my volunteer daisy fleabane. And look at these flowers. Are they not the cutest little things? It's so adorable. The pollinators love it. It's standing up nice and tall. It's about 4 feet tall right now. Might have to help it stand up a bit because it is kind of falling over a little bit. So we'll do something about that. Here is my magnificent little patch of swamp milkweed. This plant I grew from seed, and it was a while before it bloomed, but it's finally come to bloom. The flowers are absolutely beautiful. They smell fantastic. And the pollinators just love this plant. There is never a time that I have come around this plant where there's not something taking a little visit, a sip of nectar, some pollen, etc. So awesome plant for the home garden. Though it's called swamp milkweed, this one seems to be perfectly happy in my pretty average garden soil. Hiding here amongst our lupins and our hydrangea is our pale purple coneflower. This plant got quite tall last year. It was a little leggy and kind of flopped over, so I gave it this tomato cage to help it stand up tall. We've got a couple blooms coming along. Very excited to see this plant come to flower. It is a lovely plant for the garden. It just needed a bit of help to help it stand up this year. Here is my little patch of Scarlet Beebalm. I've been growing this plant for a while now. I'm not sure why it's not just filling in really well, but I'm still giving it some time. It's looking better and better each year for sure. I love the blooms of this flower. They are absolutely gorgeous. They look like a firework of color to me in the garden. Very cool. The pollinators love this plant, and so do the hummingbirds. So I haven't caught one out here yet, but really hoping to see one soon. And then we'll deadhead this soon after they pass. They bloom from the center and then out kind of like a crown. And then once they pass, I will deadhead to see if I can force some more blooms by the end of the season. And then I'll leave those to go to seed. Here's my obedient plant. It's probably about 4.5, 5 feet tall right now. And the blooms are just starting. So they bloom from the bottom up. And all these little stalks will have blooms. So in the next week or so, it'll start and then we'll have blooms for a while. It's a beautiful plant in the garden and it is a super pollinator magnet. Here is my itsy bitsy baby birch tree. This tree had a bit of a haircut. It did not do well over the winter and it looked like a bunch of it was dead. So I clipped it all off and now I've got all sorts of new growth. So I think that's just what it needed. Hopefully it's just establishing itself under the ground and then it'll grow nice and tall over time. But right now it's about 2 feet tall. Now here, standing about 6 feet tall or so, this is my American bellflower. So this has all started to go to bloom. We've got some lovely purple blooms and they're all going all the way up this stalk here. So very cool plant. This is looking very nice at the back part of the garden and it looks like we're going to have a ton of blooms for a while. Here is our morning star sedge and it looks like something had a little bit of a meal off of it. All of my seed heads that looked very, very cool, like a mace, like an old-fashioned mace, those are all gone. And there's some nibbles here too, so something got them, but that's all part of it when you're trying to build biodiversity in your yard. If something got it, that's all right. We'll hope that maybe we'll get them again next year. Here is our Michigan lily. We've got one here that I'm trying to hold up with a little stick here and then 2 smaller ones back there. The beautiful bloom that we had is all gone. Something ate it, maybe the same thing that ate the morning star sedge. So that is gone for this year. Hopefully we'll get some blooms next year. This is our Virginia mountain mint that's down here. And then at the back here, we've got our hairy beard tongue. So this is all starting to go to seed. And hopefully this will drop some seeds and it'll spread out a little bit back here as well. Here we have a couple of things going on. This is our spotted bee balm. So we've got lots of height here. It's about 2.5, 3 feet tall right now. And hopefully we'll get some of those very cool blooms. I love this plant and really happy to see it filling in nicely here. At the back, we've got some white turtlehead, 1, 2, and 3. No blooms yet on that, so maybe we'll be lucky this year as well. And then down here below, this is our wild blue phlox. So this plant is clearly a little small in front of these, so I think that's going to have to move perhaps later on in the season when it's not so hot and dry. Here is our boneset. This is going to flower sometime soon. As you can see, it's coming along. Something is very happily eating this. It's being nibbled up by something. So that's all right. I'm happy that it's getting used. Here at the back, kind of falling behind the fence, is our Woodland Sunflower. And it's got a bunch of blooms coming along. One back here. Let's see if I can get it. Isn't that a pretty flower? This is about 3.5 feet tall or so. And this again has doubled or so in size from last year as well. Looking awesome in the garden. In front of the Woodland Sunflower is another patch of our great blue lobelia, and this is coming into bloom as well. We've got a whole bunch of blooms coming, so just trying to see where this finds itself happiest in the garden. So I've got it in a couple spots. Here in front of another little patch of our American bellflower, I've got my itsy bitsy spice bush plant. And here it is. It's only about 1.5 feet tall right now, but this will get huge. And I'm hoping it'll really fill in nicely kind of in this corner of the garden. And this is a host plant to the spice bush swallowtail. So hoping to get some of those over time as well. Here's my smooth rose. This is living in a pot for now until I find a happy home for it. It has some critters eating it, which I'm usually quite happy about, but unfortunately, this little guy here is not a native critter to my area. It's native to elsewhere in the world, off in other continents. So I'm pretty bummed out about that. I was also excited, especially because look how cute this thing is. I believe this is a curled rose sawfly larva or caterpillar, and unfortunately it's not native to here. But you know what, I'm hoping that the birds will eat it, and perhaps that will add to their little healthy diet. But I don't really want to just squish them because that just doesn't feel right when you're trying to encourage critters in the garden. So I'm just going to let nature run its course. It's not invasive as far as I know, so we'll just see what happens. Here's my itty bitty rock harlequin that I grew from seed this year. It's pretty tiny, so I think I'm going to leave it in here until it kind of looks a little bit more sturdy to put it in the garden. Maybe at the end of the year, we will see. If you have any tips for growing this in the garden, please do let me know. Here are my 2 Paw Paw trees. I've got 2. They're wrapped up here from Ontario native plants. I've been trying to keep them happy, but I think I need to get them in the ground ASAP. I've been waiting to take something out to put these in, but they're still looking okay. Something is eating them, but that's all part of it, right? But yeah, they're going to need to get in the ground soon because I don't want them to be too deprived of nutrients in this little package that they're in. Here are my 3, or what was 3, baby oaks that I've been growing from seed from acorns this year. Something stole the best one, so that one's gone entirely. And then these 2, every other day, they're yoinked right out of their soil. So I'm not sure who's doing it, what little critter, probably a squirrel. I'm thinking it's playing a game with me, but I am determined to keep these things happy and healthy, so I might need to find a new spot that's a little less squirrel prone. Here are my wild bergamot seedlings. They're looking really good and happy. I think I'm going to have to split them because this is probably a bit too much for a pot. So I'm going to start putting them into smaller pots with just a few in them. And then we'll hopefully keep those happy and then find them a place in the garden. And then this little patch of seedlings, I have lost the sign for. It has faded and I don't know what it is. So if you know what these little seedlings are, they're clearly happy. So hopefully you can help me identify them because apparently the video that I had with it where it had the sign is gone. So we'll see what happens with this guy over time. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found the video interesting and helpful. If I missed anything or if you have some tips on how to keep these plants happy in a suburban garden, please be sure to leave them in the comment section below so we can all learn from each other. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more native plant garden tours, gardening adventures, and tips along the way. Thanks again and happy gardening.